Should Butler be the Sixers' #1 option?
I think so. And it's not because he's the star of the Sixers. We all know that's Joel Embiid. And we all know what we expect from Ben Simmons as well. But Jimmy Butler is a shot maker, when he's at his best. And when you consider the fact that Joel Embiid has been hampered, Max, that his health has been compromised, clearly, even though last night that wasn't the case, he had some stomach, issues, the gastro situation going on. The fact of the matter is that even prior to that, he's been suspect this series because of that left knee. And so when we look at it from that perspective, and you look at what Tobias Harris, in concert with Jimmy Butler, has to deal with, meaning the load that is Kawhi Leonard and what he throws in their direction, I think it's important to have somebody on the perimeter that answers to some degree what Kawhi Leonard is going to give you. He gave you 35 last night. He was balling. He got hot. He was doing his thing, overcoming a 20-point deficit. I'm talking about Toronto here. You know what? Jimmy Butler taking advantage of Pau Gasol, at least from a psychological perspective, is not enough in my estimation. You have to have somebody on the perimeter going up against Kawhi Leonard to some degree that says, excuse me, you're going to have to answer for something too. It's not just about us answering to you. You're going to have to deal with us. Somebody on that perimeter, meaning it's Jimmy Butler or Tobias Harris, is going to have to create those kind of problems. And Jimmy Butler showed me last night that he's going to be that guy. Tobias Harris, if you remember, against Brooklyn, struggled in games 1 and 2. Game 3, he exploded at Brooklyn, dropped 29, and we know he's capable of doing that. But Jimmy Butler, being that rough rider that he is, Max, willing to accept any challenge, willing to be somebody that's trying to get in your face, his refusal to back down to anybody. Not to say that that's not Tobias Harris, but he's usually just a scorer. Whereas with Jimmy Butler, it's on both ends of the floor where he's trying to be that rough rider. I think that's the, psychological facelift that the Philadelphia 76ers need for this series. That's why I say Jimmy Butler.
Tobias Harris is a shooter. Jimmy Butler is a scorer. And here's the problem. If Jimmy Butler's your primary scoring option, you will not win a championship. You will surely lose on the way somewhere.
I'm only talking this series, Matt.
Embiid can be your primary scorer, and maybe you could win a championship. However, Embiid has health issues. And this starts pre-draft several years ago. That's why he fell to third. It's not just the knee. It's the back that keeps him out of game shape in the playoffs. It's not like bad Embiid, he's doing something wrong. It's not like that. It's just he's a huge guy, and the rigors of the NBA season are such that if you are a giant, which he is, it can have a toll on your body.
So who you going with, Max?
What's that? So
who you going with?
Well, I'm telling you. Embiid, you have to run your offense through him when he's on the floor. You must. However, he will not be in the kind of game shape in high leverage moments to take over. Jimmy Butler can be that guy. Harris can get more touches. Tobias is a better shooter from outside, especially. And Embiid, you got to run the offense through. Simmons with the ball, but Embiid is your primary kind of offensive portal. But Jimmy Butler in high leverage situations, Stephen A., what has come to be known in the NBA as the closer, he has to be that guy. If he's the closer, I still don't think they'll advance in this series, but that gives them their best option. But that's different than saying that guy is your primary scoring option.
Well, listen, I will tell you this. Again, I never said Jimmy Butler was a shooter. I understand that Tobias Harris is more of a shooter than he is. But I also brought up the most poignant point, in my opinion, which is that you have to have a psychological answer to Kawhi Leonard. If Kawhi Leonard is doing what he does, but then somebody he doesn't have to deal with at all is doing damage against the Marc Gasols or the Serge Ibakas of the world, you got a different problem. But when it's somebody that he might directly have to contend with, you have to answer. You don't want it to be a situation where Kawhi Leonard is going out there, dominating, averaging over 30, doing what he wants, when he wants, against whomever he pleases, and you have no answers. He had 5 or 6 shots against Jimmy Butler in game 1. He had all 5 of his shots when Tobias Harris was guarding him in game 1. He had a more difficult time against Ben Simmons, but was still shooting better than 40%. The point that I'm making is that if you are a Jimmy Butler, if you are a member of the Sixers, and you have somebody that says, excuse me, I'm going to negate what Kawhi Leonard throws in your direction, because I'm going to answer that call. Then that resonates with the rest of the team, and I think that's why they won last night. I think, and I guess the more direct way to put it, Max, is I believe if Joel Embiid had dropped 30 last night, the Sixers lose the game. It's the fact that it was Jimmy Butler that did it, or if Tobias Harris that did it. I think that would have resonated more profoundly and led to the same result that we saw in Game 2. For this particular, I'm not talking about championships. For this series, Philadelphia versus Toronto, this Eastern Conference semifinal series, I think your perimeter play from Jimmy Butler or Tobias Harris is more pivotal than Joel Embiid.
What you're talking about is Butler has the heart to go up against Kawhi. Because these playoffs, and I'm going to be talking about this all day, Stephen A. I mentioned LeBron laid down the baton. He's not in the playoffs. The question is, who wants to pick it up? All these teams have players, and Butler's not quite in this conversation, but he views himself that way. Who wants to pick it up? Who has the heart to try to carry the team? You know, again, these are real even matchups in the Eastern Conference, and really even in the Western Conference. The semifinals are awesome in terms of the matchups. Who has the heart to go against the other team's best player? I know it's a team game, and there are matchups to deal with, and benches, and coaching, and everything. But what you seem to be referring to is Butler has the heart to take on the challenge of Kawhi, both ends of the floor. And what I'm telling you is that's true. But he's going to lose that, and so will the Sixers.
But it's not about losing.
I don't think you can make him your primary scoring option.
Time out. When you talk about James Harden, you talk about buckets. When you talk about Dame against Westbrook, you were like, what you gonna do? And I'm saying to you, you're taking that, and now you're going away from that mode of thinking that you agreed with for months when we're talking about basketball, when we're talking about that heart transplant, because we're talking about Kawhi Leonard. We know what he's gonna do. We know what he's going to deliver.